Hello, friends. The 1,041 days of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The situation of the Ukrainian armed forces at the front at the end of last week and the beginning of this week continued to deteriorate, although Russia did not have any major breakthroughs. The most dangerous situation is to the west of Velyka Novosilka, where the Russians have cut the road that leads to the village from the Zaporizhia region. Judging by the deep state map, the fighting has already spread to the north of the road. Considering that the northern road through Novi Kamar has already been cut, only dirt roads remain for reliable supply of Velyka Novosilka. Neskutny to the south of the village is also completely in the gray zone, which creates threats to the direct approaches to Velyka Novosilka Vremevka. Moreover, the Russians threaten this village both from the south and from the western flank. In Kurakhove, the Russians have already entered the territory of the thermal power plant, which is one of the last zones of Ukrainian defense. Footage of Russian soldiers at the checkpoint of the power plant was shown on the internet. Near Kurakhove, the Russians continue to try to break through to the highway that leads to Zaporizhia, encircling or forcing it to leave, thus the entire Ukrainian group in and around the city. To the north of this road, they have almost captured the village of Shevchenko, and further, as the Ukrainian military assumes, they can attack Andriivka. To the south, they are trying to break through to Ulakli and Kostiantinople. There are only a few kilometers left to the highway on both flanks. As for why, the Russian offensive is clearly stalling near the highway. Two main versions are being discussed among the Ukrainian military. The first is that the Ukrainian armed forces are sending reinforcements there to prevent the cauldron from closing. The second is that the Russian command is deliberately not intensifying attacks in order to allow the Ukrainian garrison to leave and thus quickly occupy the liberated territories. At the same time, the Ukrainian military writes that the highway is practically no longer used for logistics since the Russians have taken it under fire control. In the Pokrovsk direction, it is already obvious that Russian troops do not want to take Pokrovsk head-on and are trying to squeeze the city on the flanks on the one hand and on the other by advancing south of Pokrovsk immediately in the direction of the Dnipropetrovsk region. As part of the encirclement of Pokrovsk, the Russians are attacking from the partially captured Pishchany in the direction of Kotliny. This potentially threatens the last Ukrainian coking coal mine in Yudakhny. The penultimate such mine in Pishchany has already been captured, according to Ukrainian military information. The Russians are also moving towards the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region, significantly further south from Novoyelizavetivka, which has already been almost completely captured. Directly south of Pokrovsk, Russian troops are breaking through from Shevchenko to the Chunyishny railway station. It is less than a kilometer away. The Russians are advancing in Toretsk. A fighter with the call sign Mochnoi reports that the enemy is now preparing to attempt to attack and seize the Toretsk mine. According to him, after losing this line of defense, we will have to retreat from the northern outskirts, and that will be the end of it. In Chasiv Yar, the Russians capture the railway station, the Ukrainian military reports. Fighter Mochnoi writes that if the enemy increases pressure on the south, it will be very bad for our soldiers who hold the central part, and after that we will be able to hold only the southern part of the city. According to him, we must urgently strengthen the defense and do everything to prevent the enemy from getting a firm grip on the railway station, because then it will be too late to do anything. The Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State confirmed the information of military bloggers about Russia's advance in the village of Terny on the Lyman section of the Kharkiv direction. The Ukrainian military says that the Russians crossed the Jerabits River there and entered the village of Ivanivka. Meanwhile, Western media outlets have published two articles about the difficult situation of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kursk region. Ukraine could lose territory in Russia's Kursk region by spring, Bloomberg reported, citing American officials. According to them, If Moscow makes more concerted efforts to push Ukrainian troops out of the Kursk region, which are expected as early as January, the Ukrainian armed forces will only be able to hold the territory until spring, after which they will have to retreat or risk being surrounded. This, the agency writes, will weaken Ukraine in the negotiations, since Ukrainian officials have said they hope to use the territory captured in the Kursk region as a bargaining chip in any negotiations. The Associated Press writes that Ukraine's armed forces are demoralized by the growing risk of defeat in Kursk. Depleted Ukrainian troops risk losing more of their hard-won territory in the Kursk region to Russia. An article with this headline was published on the newspaper's website. The fighting is so intense that some Ukrainian commanders have been unable to evacuate the dead. Delayed communications and poor tactics are costing lives, and troops have little ability to counterattack, 7 soldiers and commanders on the front lines told the Associated Press. One company commander said half of his troops were killed or wounded. Some officers said conditions were difficult, morale was low, and troops were questioning their commanders' decisions and even the purpose of the operation. Another soldier said some orders from his commanders don't reflect reality because the territory may already be under Russian control. They don't understand where our side is, where the enemy is, what is under our control, and what is not, he said. One platoon commander said his superiors have repeatedly rejected his requests to change defensive positions that his men cannot hold. As a result, those who stand to the end up missing in action. The soldier said he knows of at least 20 Ukrainian soldiers whose bodies have been abandoned over the past 4 months because the fighting was too intense to evacuate their comrades. Given the losses in the Donetsk region, some soldiers have become more vocal about whether the battle at Kursk was worth it. All the soldiers can think about now is that the Donbas has simply been sold out. At what price? Asks the platoon commander. 5 Ukrainian and Western officials fear that betting on Kursk will weaken the entire 1,000-kilometer front line, and that Ukraine will lose valuable positions in the east. The former commander of the 3rd Company of the 134th Territorial Defense Battalion, Chasiv, also criticizes Ukraine's operation in Kursk. He said that the best Ukrainian military forces and equipment, which has already been almost destroyed, were pulled there. In his opinion, from a military point of view, the operation is senseless and has political goals. It also led to the loss of territory in Donbas. Chasiv also fears a Russian breakthrough to the Dnipro. This could happen because the state in Ukraine ceased to exist and the country has turned into a concentration camp, he said. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. I also want to ask you to leave comments. This helps promote the channel. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.